Okay, so in the last class we've talked about module 3 of the CTD along with module 1 and module 2. Module 1 was your administrative data. Module 2 covered your summaries of clinical and non-clinical data. And module 3 is your quality, which talks about the product and the drug substance. So we've covered drug substance in the last class and a little bit of drug product as well. We talked about 3 to P23, sorry, 3 to P2, 3 to P2 in the last section, in the last class, along with 3 to P1. So I'll just give you an overview of what 3 to P1 and 3 to P2 are before moving with 3 to P3. So in today's class, we will be covering the remaining sections of module 3, 3 to P, and we will then move to module 4 and module 5. We'll also see how the structure of common technical document looks like while you're submitting the dossier in a ECTD format or in paper submissions, right? So we will also cover that towards the end of this class. Let's start with 3 to P1. As the name suggests, description and composition of the drug product. So 3 to P1 basically talks about the description of the drug product, not the drug substance. So what kind of dosage form is being referred to, what is the composition of the dosage of the drug product, all the active ingredients as well as the excipients that are being used, reconstituent diluents if there are any, type of container and closure used to, used for packaging of the dosage form or any reconstituent diluent if it's applicable. All that information goes in 3 to P1 section of drug product. Okay, then comes your 3 to P2, which is pharmaceutical development. This section talks about the component of the drug product, which are drug substance and the excipients. Then it talks about drug product itself, which covers information like formulation development of the drug product, any overages in the formulation, and the physiochemical and biological properties of the drug product. Then, under the same headline of pharmaceutical development, there is also manufacturing process development, where we talk about the selection and optimization of the manufacturing processes that will be described in the next section 3 to P33. Okay. Then container closure system that's been used for the drug product, the microbiological attributes if there are any. We've talked about this already in the earlier class. And lastly is your compatibility, where we talk about the compatibility of the drug product with reconstituent diluent or dosage device or container closure system. For example, if the drug is compatible with the packaging material that we're using or the material that is being used in the formulation of container. So if they're compatible, then only a drug should be dispensed in that container. Otherwise, the formulation of the container needs to be changed as per the requirement of the drug product. Right? So this is all we've talked about in the last class, along with 3 to S, where we also covered 7 sections of drug substance. Moving forward, today we are going to talk about the manufacturers of the drug product. So when we are talking about manufacturers, we have to address the name, address, responsibility of each manufacturers, all the contractors and the vendors, proposed production site or facility involved in manufacturing and testing should be provided. Every manufacturer that is involved, even if they are just procuring the raw material and supplying it to the manufacturing plant to proceed with the production of the drug product. Even the site involved in procurement of the raw material to the site who's involved in the testing of the drug product or the final product that's been made, all the details of those manufacturer Take, for example, a manufacturer who's doing bulk production, their name also has to be included under the list of manufacturer. Then is your 32P32, which talks about batch formula. A batch formula should be provided and must include a list of all components of the dosage form to be used in the manufacturing process, their amounts on per batch basis, including overages and reference to their quality standards. So, under batch formula, you're basically submitting information related to all the components that will be used in the manufacturing of the final product, along with their quantity per batch basis. Take, for example, if one batch consists of 100 tablets, so the quantity of the components needs to be addressed under the batch formula. And if there are any overages, you also have to address the overages in the batch formula itself. And you need to make sure that the component meets the reference quality standards before proceeding with the manufacturing of the drug product. Then is your description of the manufacturing process and process control. We've also talked about manufacturing process and process control in 32S for drug substance. Just like a flow diagram that we present there, we also have to present a flow diagram here, making sure it mentions all the steps involved in the manufacturing process and all the process control that's been taken care of. So, a flow diagram should be presented giving the steps of the process and showing where material enters the process. For example, if you're manufacturing a tablet, right? So, there are a lot of steps that goes into manufacturing of tablet. The first one is procurement of raw material, then the raw material is being tested for quality standards. Once it passes the quality standard, then it goes into uh, if it's a course, the particle size has been reduced. There's particle size reduction. There's then granulation. There are a lot of steps. So you need to make sure wherever the material is entering the process, that is being mentioned. Take, for example, when you are doing compression, there the material is being entered into the machinery and the compression takes place. So you need to make sure that you are mentioning where the material is entering the process. Apart from that, all the critical steps and the points at which process control, intermediate test, or final product controls are conducted should be identified. Once that is done, you also have to make sure that you are providing a narrative description of the manufacturing process, which includes packaging that represents the sequence of steps undertaken, and the scale of production should also be provided. So once you have mapped out the entire flow diagram for the manufacturing process and process control, you also have to provide a narrative description of the manufacturing process that involves packaging, and it should represent all the steps that are being undertaken and the scale of production, that yes, this is the scale of production and this will be the manufacturing process for the packaging of that drug product. Okay, any novel processes or technologies and packaging operation that directly affect the product quality should also be described with greater level of detail. any novel any novel process or technology should be mentioned with a greater detail, because it can or cannot affect, if greater detail only if it is affecting the product quality. If the product quality is not being affected, you can just give a brief description of the novel process or the technology. Then comes your equipment. So equipment should at least be identified by type. For example, tumble blender, inline homogenizer, or centrifugation machine, or a tablet compressor, tablet punching machine, etc., along with the working capacity of that equipment where relevant. Okay. Steps in the process should have appropriate process parameters identified, such as time, temperature, or pH. Each machinery should be operated under a specific temperature, pH, relative humidity. So that needs to be identified and made sure that they are consistent throughout the process. Associated numeric values can be presented as an expected range. You can provide a range like 26 to 27 degrees, 26 to 30 degrees Celsius. If it's a long term stability, the range can be different. If it's an intermediate, it's intermediate stability testing, it can be different. So a lot of factors identify the numeric values. In certain cases, environmental conditions, like I said, a relative humidity should be stated in case of an effervescent powder, because when an effervescent powder comes in contact with the comes in contact with the atmosphere or environment with humidity, it tends to effervesce and the product quality is disturbed. So we need to make sure that in case of effervescent product, the relative humidity is as low as possible, right? Once that's done, you have to also submit data which shows proposal for the reprocessing of materials, if there's any, and it should be justified. You cannot just provide information that yes, the materials were reprocessed and not give a justification of why the materials were reprocessed, right? The data to support this justification should either be referenced or filed in this section, right? Then comes your control of critical steps and intermediate. All the critical steps that were identified in section 32P3 in 32P33 would be defined here in more detail. All the test and acceptance criteria will be provided with justification including experimental data. And if there are any information on the quality control of the intermediates isolated during the process, that will also be provided under control of critical steps and intermediate, right? Then is your process validation or evaluation, which you have to submit description, documentation, and results of the validation or evaluation studies for critical steps or critical assays used in manufacturing process. Example, you can see here validation of sterilization process or aseptic processing or filing, right? If there is any viral safety evaluation, that also needs to be provided in 32A2. We will come to 32A2 towards the end of this 32P module. So, yes, once that is done, you have to move to your next section, which is 32P4. So, 32P3. So 3 to P3 majorly talked about your manufacturer details. Then is your 3 to P4, which talks about control of excipients. And under control of excipients, we are submitting information related to the specifications used for excipients, any analytical procedure used for testing the excipients, any analytical validation information, including experimental data for analytical procedures that are used for testing the excipients, should be provided under validation of analytical procedures for excipients. If there are any justification for the proposed excipient specification, then it should also be provided under control of excipients 32P44. And lastly, 32P45, which talks about excipients of human or animal origin. If a drug product contains any excipient from animal or human origin, it needs to be mentioned under this section. And if there are any novel excipients that are being used in the manufacturing of the drug product, then we have to submit the information under 32P46. So this is about your excipients that are used in the manufacturing of the drug product. So all the data related to the excipient goes under 32P4. Then comes your 3 to P5, which is control of drug product. All the specification, analytical procedure, validation of analytical procedure goes under, analytical procedure for drug product is specified in 3 to P5 under sections P51, P52, and P53, along with batch analysis. Uh, when you are manufacturing a drug product, there are a lot of batches that are released before the final batch is being released into the market. Okay, so a batch analysis, a description of the batches and results of the batch analysis should be provided under 3 to P. 54. Then is your characterization of impurities. If there are any information on the characterization of impurities present during the manufacturing of the drug product, or as a result of the manufacturing of the drug product along with the final product, that needs to be provided under section 32P55. Lastly, there's your justification of specification. So if there are any justification for the proposed drug product specification, you need to provide it under 32P56. If there are no justifications, you can leave that section empty, uh, or just write that no specification for the drug product is being provided under this section, so that it makes it clear for the reviewer that yes, there's no justification required here, or there's no justification provided, so they can move to next section instead of wondering why the section is left empty, right? Then is your 3 to P6, which talks about reference standards or materials. So, information on the reference standards or reference materials used for testing of the drug product should be provided. Any drug, any material that is being used as a reference standard, or reference material, the details related to that needs to be submitted under 3 to P6. Okay, because for whatever drug product that you are manufacturing or submitting the documentation for approval, you need to make sure that there is a reference material or a product which has been used to to establish that yes, the new drug product or the new drug product application that you're submitting is also meets the quality of the reference drug material that's been used. Okay. Then is your container closure system, which is again very important to be submitted. So under container closure system, a description of the container closure system will be provided, including the identity of all the materials of construction. Not a single material of construction that is used in the primary packaging component should be missed out. So everything related to the material of construction and their specification needs to be submitted under container closure system. And the specification should also include description and identification and critical dimensions with drawings where appropriate. Non-compendial methods with validation should included where appropriate. It's not always required to submit non-compendial methods, but only when it is required. This is for primary packaging component, but when we talk about non-functional secondary packaging component, only a brief description should be provided. And for functional secondary packaging component, additional information should be provided. So functional secondary packaging is important than your non-functional secondary packaging. So for non-functional, just a brief is would be sufficient. And for functional secondary packaging, you have to provide additional information of the materials that are involved in the functional secondary packaging, if they have any effect on the quality of the drug product, etc., etc. All of that needs to be submitted under container closure system and for drug product. Okay. Then is your last section 3 to P8, which talks about stability. Here it is divided into three sections, just like we talked for drug substance. The first one is your stability summary and conclusion. The type of studies conducted, all the types of studies that are conducted, the protocols that are used, and the result of the studies should be summarized under stability summary and conclusion. And the summary should also include, for example, conclusion with respect to storage condition and shelf life, and if applicable, in use storage and shelf life. So you can refer to the guidelines provided on the ICH website, Q1A, Q1B, Q3, Q3B, Q5C, and Q6A for more information on the stability summary or stability data in general. Then comes your post-approval stability protocol and stability commitment. This needs to be provided in order to make sure that the drug will be compliant after it is being marketed, and that there is a protocol to to monitor the safety of the drug product after it has been manufactured. So post-approval stability protocol and stability commitment needs to be provided in 3 to P82. And the last is your stability data, where results of all the stability studies should be presented in an appropriate tabular format. Can be a graphical or narrative format, but mostly it's tabular format. And information on analytical procedures used to generate the data and validation of these procedures should be included. All the information on the analytical procedure that were used to to produce the stability data will be submitted under 32P83. So this is about your 32P section of drug product. I hope you all have read through this. I've shared with you the link for the guidelines where you can download this. So this leaves us with 32A, which is appendices, where we have 32A1, which talks about facilities and equipment, 32A2, which talks about adventitious agent safety evaluation, and 32A3, which talks about excipient, followed by 32R, which is regional information, and concluding it with 3.3, which talks about literature references. Okay, so this is about 3 of CTD, which is mainly for the quality of the drug substance and drug product. If you have to drug substance or drug product or module 32S or and 32P, you can ask the questions in the chat box, and then in 2 minutes we'll move to please feel free to ask them in the chat box, and then I'll switch to module 4. Okay, I hope the slide is visible to everyone. So we'll start with CTD module 4 and followed by module 5 and the ECTD. So this presentation will provide an overview of CTD module 4, which will focus on the non-clinical, which focuses on the non-clinical study reports, and the module is essential for ensuring drug safety and supporting regulatory submissions. When we'll talk about non-clinical study reports, we'll be focusing on the animal study reports, and when we'll talk about the clinical study reports, we will be talking about the uh, human study reports, studies that have been conducted on human subjects. Also, in non-clinical study reports, we also consider, apart from the animal studies, we also consider the preclinical data that's been provided to us. So yes, let's move. Okay, so coming to the purpose of the CTD module 4, first one is your safety evaluation, where we'll talk about drug safety evaluation before human trial, because it is very important that the safe dosage form that's been concluded here in module 4 on animal testing is close enough to the first dose that a human subject is going to administer, right? So to make sure that that happens, we need to evaluate drug safety before human trials. Second is your scientific evidence, which provides evidence on three major topics: pharmacology, kinetics, and toxicology of the drug product, of course. Then risk assessment, which helps regulator assess the risks and benefit of the drug product. And lastly is the regulatory requirement, which is required for investigational new drug and new drug application or biologics license application submission. Okay. So so overall, module 4 would be your evidence for animal studies, and module 5 would be your evidence for studies. Okay. This is the structure of CTD module 4. The first one will be your table of content, which will list all the study reports that you're submitting, all the study reports that you're submitting, and the table of content will be hyperlinked, listing will be hyperlinked so that you can navigate to the report that you want to review through the table of content instead of scrolling all the way down to that specific report. Okay. Then 4.2, which will have all the study reports, core animal or in vitro study data, etc. And the last one would be your literature references, which is required to support your published data. Right. So table of content is easy. You'll have to mention all the study reports that you title of all the study reports that you're submitting in 4.2, and just make a reference to 4.3 that yes, literature references are also present. When we move to the key components of module 4, the bulk of module 4 is study reports. Okay, so study reports is further divided into three sections. First one is your pharmacology studies, then is your pharmacokinetic studies, and the last one is your toxicology studies. These are the main core documents or the study reports that needs to be submitted. Apart from that, they we can also submit carcinogenicity studies, or if there is any reproduction related toxicity that's been talked about for that specific drug product, that can also be included and be mentioned as 4.2.4 or 4.2.5. So yes, but that is secondary. The primary three study reports that needs to be submitted are the pharmacology studies, the pharmacokinetic studies, and the toxicology studies. The in pharmacology studies, you have to submit primary pharmacodynamics, which will confirm the mechanism of action, and then the secondary pharmacodynamics, which will cover the off target effects. Okay, so the first one is your primary pharmacodynamics, and the second one would be your secondary pharmacodynamics. The first one will talk about mechanism of action, and the second one will talk about the unintended effects or off target effects. Okay. And lastly, the third thing that comes under pharmacology studies is the safety pharmacology, which talks about effects on vital system, for example, cardiovascular, respiratory, or central nervous system. So under pharmacology studies, you are submitting your study reports under three heading. The first one will be your primary pharmacodynamics, then secondary pharmacodynamics, and the third one would be your safety pharmacology. Then comes your pharmacokinetic studies, which will determine the ADME profile. ADME stands for absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Um, this is along with this, there's also species comparison that is being submitted under pharmacokinetic studies. When we say species comparison, we are talking about effect of the drug product in different species. For example, the same drug is being administered to a dog, a rat, or a monkey, and the effects in those three species are observed recorded and submitted under pharmacokinetic studies. This way, we can identify if there is any accumulation potential, if the drug is being accumulated, or if there are any metabolic pathway that the drug is following that is not being intended for. So, uh, when doing studies on multiple species, we can uh, identify a lot of other factors as well. So all that data goes under pharmacokinetic studies, right? Then comes your toxicology studies, referred to as 4.2.3, and this talks about acute and chronic toxicity assessments, which is covered under single dose toxicity, also known as acute toxicity. There's repeat dose toxicity, which is a 14 to 90 day studies to find NOAL, which is referred to as no observed adverse effect level. Apart from that, there's genotoxicity, there's carcinogenicity, there's any reproductive or developmental, you know, fatality, local tolerance, immunotoxicity, or phototoxicity. So, all those study reports will be submitted under toxicology studies. I'll repeat again, studies like single dose toxicity reports, repeat dose, genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, reproductive and developmental fatalities or toxicity, local tolerance for injectables or other topical products, and immunotoxicity, phototoxicity, all of them are being submitted under toxicology studies, right? So this is just a brief of what I've told you, Abhi. Importance of pharmacology study is because it determines how the drug works in the body, evaluates desired effect and potential side effects, and provides helps and supports in early decision making before human trials. These are pharmacokinetic and ADME studies. Absorption means how the drug enters the bloodstream. Distribution is how it's spread in tissues. Metabolism is how the body processes the drug, and excretion is how it is eliminated. And these are all your toxicology studies: single dose, repeat dose, genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, reproductive, immuno, phototoxicity, etc. Now, why is module 4 required when you are submitting a dossier? So, regulatory requirement for module 4 is because we need to make sure that it is GLP compliant. Good laboratory practice compliance is there so that it ensures steady reliability. Okay. Then is your ICH guidelines, which defines non-clinical study requirements. So you need to make sure whatever data that you're submitting under module 4 meets the non-clinical study requirements laid down by the ICH. Lastly is your global authorities, which are your FDA, EMA, PMD, or any other stringent bodies. So we need to make sure that we are meeting the specific requirement laid down by the agency. Okay, FDA has certain different requirements when it comes to module 4. So does EMA or PMDA. Okay. So what happens when we are preparing module 4? What are the challenges that one face while preparing module 4? The first thing that a person faces is the toxicology concern. Unexpected findings can halt drug development. So when we are performing toxicology studies, if there are any unexpected findings, it can deviate the process of it can deviate us from the process of drug development, because we have to go again and address that toxicity before moving on with the human clinical trials. Then regulatory variations. Like I said, different country has different requirements, and we need to make sure that we are meeting those requirements. If not, we have to go back. The drug approval process will be delayed. So we need to go through all the requirements laid down by a specific regulatory body to make sure that the data we are submitting is compliant with their regulations. And last is your data completeness. If there is any missing study, then it may lead to it may lead to delayed approvals, and we do not require that. So we should make sure, the regulatory professional should make sure, should review the documents in a way that they are complete and no data is being missed. If there is any missing data, there's a justification provided for the missing data so that the authority accepts it, and we can submit the missing data later on, right? So this is about your module 4. If you have questions related to module 4, you can ask them, and then in a minute we'll move towards module 5. Okay, so moving on with structure of module 5. Module 5 will provide human evidence for human evidence of efficacy, safety, and benefit risk justification for marketing authorization. Right? Why are we submitting a dossier? We are submitting a dossier for or to receive a marketing authorization for the drug product. Right? So last section, that's module 5, clinical study reports, will provide human evidence of efficacy, safety, and benefit risk justification for marketing authorization. Okay, so before moving with the module 5 structure, which is also referred to in ICH M4E guideline. If you have any questions so far related to module 1 to module 4, please drop them in the chat box, and then we'll move with module 5. Okay, so let's move on with module 5. The first thing that is being submitted in module 5 is your table of content. Table of content under heading 5.1. So it is also again a hyperlinked structure, so that it becomes easier for the reviewer to navigate between the study reports that he or she wants to refer to. Okay, so, table of content will provide a detailed index of all clinical study reports included in Module 5 submission for easy navigation through the document. It ensures that the reviewers can quickly assess essential data on clinical effectiveness and safety. Then is your section 5.2, which is tabular listing of all the studies. So it will give an overview table of the type of clinical study that is being referred to, the phase of the clinical study, the objective of the clinical study, and the targeted population. Okay, so 5.2 will give you an overview of all the study reports that we are submitting in the next section, which is section 5.3. Okay, so in 5.3, we are submitting clinical study reports, which are detailed documents outlining the methodology, results, and conclusions of the clinical trial. They provide in-depth information about the studies conducted to assess the safety, efficacy of a pharmaceutical product. Each clinical study report describes the study design, the patient demographics, results, and statistical analysis, serving as crucial evidence in regulatory submission for drug approval. Okay, so clinical study reports is the bulk of module 5. We submit clinical study reports like bioequivalence, where we are submitting studies of bioavailability and bioequivalence. Then we are submitting documents or the study reports for human pharmacokinetics, which covers ADME and other drug interactions. So the section 5.3, where we are submitting clinical study reports, is further divided into five pharmacology profile and other interactions. Then is your section 5.3.3, which talks about human pharma. Then is your 534, which talks about efficacy and safety studies, basically phase 2 and phase 3 as pivotal trials. Pivotal means small scale trial before. Then 535, which is talks about post applicable, and 536 case report and patient listings. Okay, so this is all the data that is being submitted under clinical study reports 5.3. Multiple reports can be submitted under one header. For example, 5.31 biopharmaceutics can have more than 10 study reports to establish the bioavailability or bioequivalence. So head classes or a new for a new drug application. Okay, because clinical trial studies and non-clinical trial studies are mostly submitted in new drug applications only after getting approval for IND. Okay, in for ANDA we do not submit biologics or non-clinical study reports, because we only have to prove the bioequivalence to an already approved drug, right? So regulatory importance of clinical study reports. First is your clinical evidence for drug approval. Clinical evidence gathered from all the clinical study reports provides the foundation for drug approval by demonstrating that the safety by demonstrating the safety and efficacy of pharmaceutical products. If you are not able to establish or demonstrate the safety and efficacy, then there will be no approval granted to your drug product. Okay, so regulatory agencies evaluate these documents to ensure that the benefits of the drug outweighs the risks involved, because no drug is entirely safe. There are risks associated with any drug product that you are using, right? So what does the regulatory body do? Regulatory body does is they evaluate all the clinical study reports that we've submitted, and they make sure that the benefit that we are getting from the drug product outweighs the risks associated with the specific drug. Okay, this leads to an informed decision on market access. So it is very important to submit clinical study reports. Then comes your supports risk benefit assessment. So the data presented in the clinical study report helps assess the risk benefit ratio of a drug. By analyzing adverse events alongside therapeutic outcomes, regulators can determine whether the drug provides a favorable outcome for patients compared to its risk, ensuring the public health is prioritized in the approval process. If the risks outweighs the benefits, then the drug is not then the drug does not get a marketing approval and or marketing authorization, and it does not come into the market unless the benefits outweighs the risks. Okay, so clinical study reports helps establish that. and then it also facilitates international submission. So module 5 is designed to comply with international guidelines set by ICH, facilitating the submission process for regulatory approval across different regions such as US, Europe, Australia. You all know that if a drug gets approval in one of the stringent market, then it gets approval in the raw markets easily. So if you've submitted data in the for a stringent market, US FDA or EMA, and then you can just you don't have to make revisions reports. You can submit those study reports in the non-regulated market as well. Okay, this ensures that the companies can market their drug globally without repetitive documentation and therefore streamlining the approval process. So, Module 5 and its component is vital for those in regulatory affairs. It provides structured and comprehensive information required for drug approval, ensuring compliance with global standards and the successful introduction of safe, effective pharmaceuticals to the market. Okay. This is Module 5. So, now I'll share with you I'll show you M4S guidelines, which provides a structure of how the CTD should look like. So let's just go to that. Okay, I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So this is the guideline M4, organization of the common technical document for the registration of pharmaceuticals for human use. You can go through this guideline once you've understood all the documents that are being submitted. When you read through this guideline, you'll have a better understanding of how the documents are being placed, right? We've talked about a lot of sections and subsections. Here you'll get an idea of how that is actually done. For example, let's go to the organization of the common technical document. You will see the granularity right now. So this is for module 2, paper and eCTD v 3.2.2 submission. This is an older version of the eCTD that we're talking about. This granularity is applicable to both the paperwork on a common technical document. So you can see here there is a module 2, which is the header, multiple sections and subsections. So this is how you're submitting your documents in this format. That was for module 2. This is for module 3. You can see we have module 3, note 1, 3.1, 3.2, all under note 2, and the subsections 32S, 32P, their subsection, and more subsections. This is the latest format of or can explained. So for the yellow highlighted columns, documents rolled up to this level are not considered appropriate and no document is to be present at this level. No document can be provided in this level. It's just a heading, module 3, under which there is another folder which is referred to as 3.1 or 3.2. Again, in 3.1, you have to submit a TOC which is only applicable for paper submission, not for the eCTD. Okay, then is your 3.2. Here also you can't submit any file. You have to submit a file under 32S1. Okay, so 32S is again a header, subnote of 3.2, and then comes your 32S, and then comes your 32S1. 32S1 is where you're submitting or uploading your PDF file if you're submitting an eCTD. So you submit your PDF under 32S1 under note 4 of module 3. I'll show you how it looks. just get an understanding of how in yellow highlighted parts we do not upload any file, we only upload file in the green highlighted part. Or take for example, if there's only one file that needs to be uploaded. For example, we have a single bring 32s2 32s2 that file, that singular file in 32s2, either this or either blue highlighted part or green highlighted part, right? So this is how a common technical document is being submitted. If you read through this, you'll understand more about how a submission is done. I will also share a snapshot of common technical document. Just a second. Okay, I hope this is visible to everyone. So as you can see here, there is a name of the drug product provided here. Hope my cursor is visible to everyone. Just a second. See, as you can see here, Edentia FDA 021988. This is drug product name and a number provided to that drug product or the application number that's been provided. Then comes your uh, application number, which is 000, quarter zero in this case. This means that this is for initial registration. This is the first time you are doing a submission for that specific drug product, right? Then is your FDA regional requirement, administrative data, and M1 regional. You can see the branching happening. Then there's under M1 you have M1 forms for FDA. When you're submitting an NDA application to US FDA, there are multiple forms that are required. So all those form goes under this M1 form. Then if there are multiple cover letters, they come under M12 cover letters. Just like that, there's M13 to M114, right? All the documents will go in the folders. When you open this folder, there'll be more folders where you have to upload your PDF file. Okay, just like that, there's M3, M2 summaries, M3 quality, where you will have two sections, 3 to P and 3 to S, and the granularity would be like we discussed. And then will be your M4 non-clinical study reports and M5 clinical study reports. When you'll open the M5 clinical reports, it'll look like this. This is a screenshot of a submission system where we are uploading is to generate an regulatory body. Okay, so this is how submissions are done. I hope module one uh, fingertips when asked, and understand how the document is submitted, right? So this is it from my side for this class. If you have any questions, please you can ask them in the next session, and we can conclude this class now. Thank you so much, everyone.